Okay, welcome everyone to another 4D Method 4D user group meeting. Today is August 14th, 2024. This is meeting number 73, fighting number 73. Okay, on our agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about 4D Method, the user group, what we're doing here, and about upcoming user group presentations. Hopefully, we'll be adding your name to the list soon. Kirk Brooks will give us a quick happy hour review before heading off on his own travels. Ricardo Mello will take over the 4D news for today. And then I'll talk a little bit about what's been going on in the 4D blog, some of the latest, greatest articles that have come out about the upcoming R release of version 20. Then I'll hand it over to Ad for some notes about the knowledge base, the recent knowledge base tech note that just came out. And then we'll have our special topic presenter, Bruno Raeymaekers, presenting on the full database insight through the lens of a single method. My name is Brent Raymond, for those of you that don't know me yet. I organize this 4D user group. Also do the webpage at 4dmethod.com, and you can reach me at 4dmethod@gmail.com. I am a longtime 4D developer. I like to see what other people are doing with 4D, and it's always different ways that people program, different ways that solutions and applications that people write for different problems out in the world, and it's just very interesting to see, and sometimes humorous, and definitely entertaining. So that's why I started this online, so that people can join from anywhere. Just trying to bring together the community of developers and 4D users, 4D application users like us out there. Not only to share programming techniques, just to see, like I mentioned, what 4D is doing out there in the world. You can also, this is a great place to reach out and reach out to any of the presenters and people who participate in the 4D Method community to find 4D development support. It's very interesting to see what can be done with 4D. A lot of things can be done with 4D, more than you might think. So there's some great ideas floating around this user group. And just so you know, this is your 4D support community. Feel free to reach out and offer to show off your own work. On October 2nd, our next 4D Method user group meeting, we're having James Scott and Jeff Kane from Sweetwater in our neighboring state, Indiana, one of the biggest 4D installations in the world. They'll be here to talk about automating 4D developments using GitLab CI/CD pipelines, continuous integration / continuous deployment. I think there's another term for it, but it's basically figuring out the best tips to use for automating your build process with your project repositories. So they will have some definite pro tips. They are here to share how to scale up your project and really turn your releases around quickly and organize large development efforts. But all of this does also apply to smaller projects, which is nice. What about you? What are you working on? We've got one more open date for this year, November 20th. And we've yet to plan for all of next year. So don't say you can't make it. There's a day next year that's got your name on it. So you can also record a short demo if you prefer not to do it live. But it's also fun to show it off in person and answer questions about your work and about your application and how you're doing your 4D. So you can check out the schedule for 4D Method out there at 4dmethod.com/schedule. Yeah, so moving right along, I'm gonna kick it over to Kirk to talk a little bit about the weekly 4D happy hour, where there's always interesting things being talked about.
Well, thanks, Brent. As always, it's great to be here. It's nice to participate in this. And yeah, it's been going on for a while now. I think this is pretty cool. Just to introduce myself, I'm Kirk Brooks. Again, I'm one of the old hands who's been using 4D since just forever. And these days, I am particularly excited and interested in the new direction that 4D has gone in implementing ORDA and working with folks with modernizing their older databases. And with 4D Happy Hour, we're into our fourth year now of weekly meetings every Friday, 3:30 Pacific Daylight Time. I'll throw the link in here for anybody who can join in. I know that's really tough for folks in Europe, but golly, it's just a really wonderful, far-flung community that 4D represents, and it's great to see a lot of folks just stopping by 4D Happy Hour from time to time. Recently, I've been seeing a lot of new faces, and that has really added to the discussions. Some of those discussions that we will typically get into, or for example, we had a really productive discussion following the rollout of 20R5 and the webinar that associated that. The following Friday, we all got together, talked about that. We tried out some of the new things, and that really highlights one of the nice features, I think, about happy hour. Unlike unlike a more formal presentation like this, happy hour is pretty relaxed. So it's a nice opportunity to share screens and just put stuff up and just ask a question and like, well, what if you try this? And just try it, see what happens, blow things up, find out what works, what doesn't. And those, in the process of those discussions, you learn a lot. It's just exciting to sit around as coders and developers and try things and talk about the technology and what we're doing, what we're not. Another thing we did recently was Angel Vasquez took me on a deep dive into implementing Docker on a Macintosh in this case. Not strictly a 4D related thing, but it turns out Docker or running a Docker is essentially the same thing or uses the same process, the same methods as running GitHub Actions. So that's a way to, there's a way to affect some crossover in the actions that you want to perform on GitHub and actions that you might want to perform directly on your laptop. And of course, we have numerous cases of people coming in and just saying, hey, can I show something? And sharing a screen with the question like, why does this happen? Or has anybody ever seen this? And these, again, these just turn out to really be great discussions, very productive. It's always interesting to see how somebody else approaches a problem, how somebody else thinks about a problem, the tools that somebody else uses in working with 4D, leading inevitably to one of us at some point just exclaiming, gosh, I never knew you could do that. So that's my spiel, that's my invitation. I hope you can stop by, and back to you, Brent.
Thanks, Kurt, and thanks for organizing that every week. It's always a lot of effort to organize these things every 6 weeks, so it's a lot of effort and a lot of dedication to the community to have this happy hour, and it's certainly a ton of value. So appreciate your efforts, Kurt.
Happy to do it.
All right. Now I'm going to hand it over to Ricardo Mello over at 4D to talk a little bit about some of the recent news from 4D themselves.
I guess. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Brent and the 4DMethod for inviting me and Ed. That's great. We're always happy to be here. As you are aware, Jim, which is our beloved Jim, today he had a conflict. So unfortunately, he's not with us. He has another meeting that was important for him to be there, but he sent hello to the community, and he will be back next episode of the 4DMethod. I'm especially looking forward for Bruno's presentations today. We have been knowing Bruno from a long time, and it feels like a treat to have him sharing his coding experience with us. So good luck, Bruno, today in your presentation. We are sure your demo will help the 4D community to keep strong and the 4DMethod legacy. So a little detail here, as you know, we are passing the midpoint for the next version of 4D. We are right now V20, R6 is coming out, right? So V21 is getting closer and closer. And I'm just mentioning that just so you're aware that the 4D engineering team for the last 3 years is pretty much working like a clock, putting our versions in a very steady and precise pace with a great and impressive level of quality. So we are V20, but going to V21, and you can always have a little bit of a sneak peek of the version V21 every time that you try an R release. So, and not related completely, but you guys understand as well. So maybe Brent, the next slide about the V19. Yes. So all our efforts in V20 and V21 right now are the release of the R versions. So we have this new pace where V9, the older version, we stopped developing. We think the version is stable enough after 1 year, the release of the older version. So we think that's stable enough right now that people in V19 can keep their work, but also look for the V20. So as you know, V19 is no longer being supported, and that helps us a lot to keep our focus on the V20 LTS releases, and there are versions for the next 4D. So we have, and at the end, we hope this is an encouragement for you to adopt the latest version of 4D. You know, the LTS V20 or any R release can fit your needs. And with the level of quality that has been coming out those last 3 years with these cycles, we're pretty confident that some clients are in production with our releases, right? And you have examples probably in this community, lots of them. Also, a little extra news here. It's not extra, but we would like to reinforce the on-demanding training. As you know, we just released a new one with Codely Studio, talking about Codely a little bit more in detail. But you know, our on-demanding training right now is covering from like someone that's just starting to the experts. We have lots of on-demanding training there for you. Please check the website whenever you need, or if you need to point it out someone that needs to learn 4D, this is a great resource for the new folks coming into this platform. Maybe next slide, Brent. And yeah, let's talk a little bit about the webinar. I liked a lot what happened last webinar. So we had a major breakthrough, which is before we were doing webinars, it was a lot of features. We just mentioned the features. And now with this new format where the team will and Ed are pretty much working some examples for you folks. And we think that we are in a winning team now. We think that we nail a little better format for the webinar because the responses were unbelievable. Not only here, but it's being adopted in the whole globe for all the webinars that we do all over the world. Is going to be our new format for webinars. So we first want to thank you all for attending on July 18th, the V20 R5 webinar. And just to, so you know, we're going to keep that. So that format is going to be the new format of the webinars, and we are very excited about that. You know, soon we're going to have the R6, and you guys are going to be able to see it, and so far, and so on. So also, not so sure if it is related to the webinar, but more for the releases. I don't know if you receive the conversion report. For this now releasing V20 conversion report. So people that are having difficulties to move from one version to the other, or they don't have the resources anymore, or they are, you know, they need help. We have this free report that helps to point out a few areas. And we were using this mainly on the US for a few years. So to help our clients to, you know, push this agenda that if you are in 4D and you have a mission critical application, there's no reason for you to be in V6 V. And believe me, there's lots of clients are still training there. There's you know, V11 is still common, V13 is still common. So we are pushing the whole community to bring this to the latest version. So we're trying to help as much as possible. But the good, interesting thing is this report or this campaign, email campaign, you probably received that in your emails if you were part of our mailing list, went global. And it was quite impressive, the result of this globally. So we still have lots of people that needs to catch up. And congratulations if you are in V19, V20, and especially the R versions, testing them. And we're pretty happy about this community. And yeah, keep doing the great work that you guys are doing. And that's all for me, Brent.
Okay, well, thanks, Ricardo. And I would like to also put in my 2 cents about the release webinar. Great new format. It's way more relatable with the live demos. Not only do they announce the new features, but then, you know, kick it right over into the code and show you step through how to use the new features. Something that I've long wanted to do here, but you know, we don't want to make these user group meetings too long with the main presentation and stepping through each of the new features. So so great. Yeah, no, it's and the recording is available on YouTube. So one way or another, you can skip around and see any demos of any of the new features that apply to you. And we'll talk a little bit about some of these features here. We've already covered a lot of the features that came out with R5, 20 R5. Again, just a very valuable list of functionality here that I, for one, can't wait to use. Where we use R versions for almost all of our releases, unless it's rolled over just to a brand new major version at the museum. Our versions are just a great opportunity not only to use some of these new features, but to trickle them into your environment so that when you switch over to a new major version, it's not you know, it's not going to be very disruptive because you've essentially been transitioning to the new major version with each of the R releases. So there's a strong strong advantage for upgrading your way through the R releases as they come out, if nothing else than to try all of the great new language options that are in each of them. For instance, the package manager with the dependencies, if you use a lot of components, it's just a great addition, great modernization of that environment, of that use support of components. The try, catch, and end try structures in the language. The quick network layer, I'm interested in deploying that myself very soon to modernize the network layer, move it forward to what all the big boys are using on the web, big boys and girls, shall I say. Then restricted entity selections, singletons, update of the initialization of class properties and variables in a single line. The update for all of us who are managing our projects with Git, where now we don't have to worry about style changes between developers, cascading a huge structure change that ripples throughout the repository with the catalog editor file. Just a whole lot of great stuff. But that's R5. That's kind of yesterday's news. And now with the 4D blog, we have our latest installment of articles about the new features coming in R6. It's again R5. Any R version these days is almost as much as a full version release. So there's a lot to talk about here, but I'll just highlight a few. First of all, an extension for managing HTTP requests with a new 4D class called the HTTP agent. Now, what that does is it works with your existing HTTP requests to effectively, if you're calling the same server all the time, and you set up an agent and have shared properties like the keep alive or the timeout, and the agent will keep that connection alive, even though the HTTP requests themselves are, disposed after they're used. And so when you make another request, it can skip some of that initialization that has to be done with the server. And so it's a real nice addition for the class use of HTTP commands, which is totally the way to go. It's much easier way to program HTTP client requests. So then also enhanced session storage access, effectively accessing other people's session data between sessions. Very interesting article on practical ways that you can use that. Also using classes across components. That's great. We've got 20 odd components at the museum that we've created to silo our utility functions, and now we can use the classes between the components instead of just within the host or the matrix database. That's a natural step for supporting classes with components. Great to see. Then also moving 4DNetKit forward with customizing OAuth 2.0 connection interface, an article just about how to show your own OAuth login instead of just kicking it out to a browser. You can show your own login in a 4D web area on a 4D form, which is nice for customizing your environment. A couple more to talk about. Now you can use equals and not equals with objects and within collections and objects, anything that's basically a reference. So when you do a comparison, is this equal to that between two objects, it's comparing, is it the exact same reference, which actually, if nothing else, adds a lot of clarity within the runtime explorer or for debugging. Is this the same object or is it a copy of the object? And not only that, but it's immediately usable, useful with things like if you're using arrays, an array of objects, you can now find an object in an array quickly because of the fact that it's using the reference comparisons behind the scene. Same thing with collections and dot query, as well as entity selections and dot query. Of course, that would be on the database, but you get my point. So it's definitely useful. And there's another article on integrating 4D components directly from GitHub. That goes along as a natural next step with the dependency manager that was added in R5. Well, now you can just have the component itself be a reference to a repository on GitHub, and 4D will manage that dependency for you and do things like automatically update that component to the latest version, or make sure that that component is on a specific version for to be compatible with your latest release. It's again, very nice change for R6. And then also, this is really nice. I've been wanting this for a long time. Customizing global warnings generation. That's a fancy way of saying you can now turn on warnings for, say, an old database or old application, 4D application, that may have thousands of pointer references that would normally create warnings just to let you know, well, they can't, 4D, the compiler can't check this definitely for you, so you need to go out there, and you can always add the compiler directives that say, well, I've checked it, I know it works, and don't worry about it. Well, now the 4D will show you a whole list of the compiler warnings that you can enable and disable. Now, this is super useful, if not just for the fact that, if you've been using this application for a long time, these are standard libraries, that it works. I don't want to know about all the pointer issues or other things that are warned in the past. They've made the warnings actually very, not that they weren't useful before, but they're especially useful now when working with classes and class functions and that kind of thing, that they can warn you that, say, you've mistyped a class function and that kind of thing. And per se, it's not an error, but it will certainly make an issue in your application once you try to run it. So this is just a long-winded way, my apologies, to say this is really nice because you can mute all the errors that you don't care about, or all the warnings you don't care about, and turn the warnings back on, release the warnings for the ones that you find useful. So again, thank you. This was a good addition. So anyways, that's my highlights from the 4D blog. And now I'm gonna kick it over to Ad to talk about one of the recent tech notes that came out in the knowledge base.
Thanks, Brent.
Yep.
Hello, everybody, and thank you again for having me here each time. And for this time around, I will be talking about a tech note that just came out last month. This is a tech note written by Thomas Schlumberger. He recently did a presentation here as well on the info report component. As you all know, he's been around a long time, have written so many wonderful things for our team, especially working closely with him from support. So he has a lot of knowledge inside and out in terms of how to do things better, how to detect things that you can that may present a problem for the future. So one of the result of that is this particular tech node that he put together. It's quite a useful tool that we've been doing this ourselves internally as well. When we are working with an old database, we're trying to find out, okay, these are the area that needs to be updated and needs to be improved. And a lot of time we have to deal with some manual process. Thomas created this tech node to help out and eliminate some of those manual tasks you have to do. He produces a component that is running version 20. You can install it in version 20 R and all of the R releases as well. What it does is it allows you to evaluate an application. A lot of time, when you have, I think all of us have done many applications over the years since who knows what version. Over the all of these time, we've been using things that were available to us at that time, and it maybe makes sense then, may not make sense now. Some of the obsolete stuff needs to be updated. So this component does just that, is to parse through all of your methods and different parts of your application and try to point out how many things that you need to improve on. For example, if you look at the screenshot right there on the right side, the report is quite simple. It's basically just an alert showing you the number of things that it looks for. For example, it looks for the number of inter-process variable, including inter-process array. We all know that in order to go preemptive, those are the things that you have to address, as well as the number of obsolete command. It will also tell you where they how many you have. He also added a very nice and useful things that is quite helpful, is to replace old possible code, which is anything that has been deprecated or obsolete. There is a option that will do that automatically, which is quite useful. Rather than having you go to all of your codes and do them manually, it will do that job for you. Within the same component, it also gives you an ability to view all of your methods history. Not so much of the history, but more like a time date, modification date and creation date. This is quite helpful when you have to work in project mode now with collaborative effort or development, because of normally when we look at the methods itself, it doesn't really give us much of the information of when things happen, when it was changed, until you actually go down to the file level and take a look at those information at the file info. So this is quite a useful tech node and components. Just a quick note, the component comes as is. It doesn't come with the source code. We'll talk to Thomas later and see if in the future we can do an update and provide source code if it's necessary. In the meantime, this is out of the box that you can plug it into any of your application and start using it. Okay. And again, just as a reminder, this is part of our TechNode series. And if you are 4D partners, which I'm hoping that everyone is in here, you get to see, you get to benefit the latest and greatest TechNode that come out from our team. Okay. And that's all from me, Brent. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ed. Always good stuff coming out with the tech notes. This one produces some interesting metrics. Some numbers you want to see go up and other numbers you want to see go down as you're modernizing your 4D code base. It would be nice to see the source, obviously, especially for the check mark for replacing old code. You want to make sure that it's covering all the cases that for the code instances in your application. So anyways, thanks for all the support and great tech notes coming out of your team there, Ed.
Thank you.
All right. So now let's kick it over to Bruno, who's joining us from Nazaré, if I'm saying it right or butchering it as usual, Portugal, also known as the Silver Coast and home of some of the biggest wave surfing in the world. Now, I didn't know that. I had to Google that, but there's some pretty awesome pictures out there on the interwebs. This is Bruno's second user group presentation. The first time around in 2016, he shared a list box component for setting up and maintaining list boxes. In the past, up until 2000, Bruno worked mainly in the Belgian travel industry and for both of Belgium's nuclear plants. Woo! Since then, he has developed 4D applications for HBO Latin America and for QMed in Florida. And then he retired in 2021. But he is currently still consulting for his last employer and dividing his time enjoying the best of Florida, Portugal, and 4D development. So welcome, Bruno, and thanks for joining and showing off some of your work here. Bruno?
Okay.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I will stop my share and hand it over to you, okay?
Okay. You should see everything now.
Yep.
Okay. Good. So as the title of this session already suggested, what we're gonna change or show today is a lot of information about the structure of your database, all in one place. We do have a great graphical presentation in 4D, but once you get over 100 tables and a couple of thousand fields and indexes, it becomes sometimes cumbersome to look at or to find your way through it. And definitely if when you're talking relations, finding the way of your relations from one table to another is not always easy to do. So I came up with an idea. I said there must be an easier way of doing this. And that's the first part of the presentation. Basically, that is the what are we showing? The second part is basically how did we do that? And since this is a user group that has as its motto, it's all in the method, I'm going to say this thing is all in one method. So just let's start it and let's see where this goes. So Brent already told you that everything is in GitHub. You can download it from there. The code that's in there is v19 code, but I'm going to show it in v20 today. There should be no problem converting everything from v19 to v20.
I did just add a link to that in the meeting chat if anybody needs a quick link for the repository.
Okay, like I said, everything is in one method, and the one method is called UT catalog view. You can copy paste that in your own projects or whatever you want to do with it. And when you start the method, basically, it asks you to point to a catalog file. So I have a couple of catalog files available here. And this one, you were saying something, Ben?
Oh, I was just going to say, the catalog file being the textual representation of the 4D structure.
Yeah, so that is what you find in your project folder once you're working in project mode. Okay, so that is an XML file. What happened when you pointed to that XML file is basically parsed, and it is all the information in there is loaded into 4 collections, four 4D collections. One that holds all the tables, another one that holds all the relations, all the indexes, and all the fields. For the tables, basically what we show as information, if you open this up, that is besides the table name, you have what is the primary key of this table. Is this table open to REST access, yes or no? Is the table in the log file for 4D? Is that table set up to be a synchronization or what is the term that I keep forgetting this name? Now for replication, basically. Is it the table encryptable? Is the table set up to delete the record completely, yes or no? Is it a visible table? And then you have the 3 triggers, whether they are basically activated or not. So that is all the table information that you get. Then, of course, when you click on a table, in this grid, you get all the field information about the table. And below that one, you get all the relations of that particular table. Now, let's go through all the attributes of the fields that you see here. Of course, what type of field is it? If it's an alpha field, how long has it been defined in the structure file? What is the primary key? Or is this field the primary key in the table? Yes or no? Is the content of this field unique? This is the auto-generate for UUID fields, and if it's a UUID field, yes or no? Is it field set up as auto-increment, yes or no? Is the field indexed, yes or no? What type of index is it? And this column is information that you don't directly find in the 4D structure, but that shows you how many times a field is actually indexed in the database. And I'll come back to that in a second. Then on field level, whether the field is available as a REST resource, yes or no, whether the field has styled text that the queries will ignore if needed to, whether the data of the field is stored inside the database or outside the database, if the field is visible, mandatory, enterable, or modifiable. So these are all the field attributes, and on this side you have all the table attributes. Now, if you go to the lower part here and you see all the relations for this particular table, and you select the relation and you click on it, basically, well, this is a purchase order. Let me go and take another relation. That might be easier. So basically, this is a header file of purchase orders and a detail file of purchase orders, right? Where you can see which fields are the related fields, what the one relation and the n relation, and the name of the relations, in case you already renamed them to be useful in order. From here on, you can walk through the relation if you want to. You can go from PO items to purchase orders. Now you end up with another table that in itself has maybe other relations. So in this case, we have a relation to a vendor table. If you click on that one, then you see that full relation in its detail. Going back to purchase orders or maybe to items, there is other things here. You can obviously relate to a manufacturer if you want to, or to the product itself. you can walk through all your relations throughout the whole database, and whatever is related, you have access to it. And going back to the tables, if you double click on a table, you get all the index information. Now let me filter here. And get a table that has interesting index information, like this one. So what does this thing tells you? This is the table name. These are all the fields in that particular table that are indexed, but you also have an overview of all the composite indexes. So what this tells you is that there's in total 9 composite indexes on this table, and those 9 indexes in total have 33 fields in them. Now, if you look, for instance, at this field, let's open it up a little bit. So I told you earlier in this thing that this gives you the number of times a field is indexed. And normally you would maybe think that the field is only indexed once, but once you have composite indexes, that's no longer the case. So if I go back to my indexes, what I see here that this field has been indexed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and this is the 9th, and that is the 9 that you see here. I think this table has a couple of fields like that. For instance, here we have another interesting one. You go to the category field. See that is a field that has been indexed quite a lot of times within this table. Now, double clicking on the field itself gives you, again, an overview of all the attributes of the field, but then you get the information of relations and indexes from the field perspective. So if I select the field here, let's take category again, and you see that this field is comprised into 13 composite indexes. Now this table have no relations, but if I would go back to PO, items and look at PO number. So here you see the relation. Of course, you only get one because the field typically is, well, not necessarily always, depending on whether it's a one or a many relation, you can have multiple relations coming to the same field. Every tab has a way of basically filtering the data. In the case of the tables, it works on table number. If you know the table numbers, or just part of the table name. So this is not a start with, this is, you get all the table names that have PO in them. For the relations is the same thing. It basically filters on all 6 fields at the same time, and any of the fields or any of the columns that have the content that you type will come up in the filter list. Same thing for the indexes. In the indexes, we filter on the table name, the field name, and the index name. And on the fields, we filter on the field, the table name, the field name, and the field type. So if you would want to see, for instance, all the Boolean fields in your database, this is the list of them.
Now, you had a specific purpose for creating this tool.
Yeah, I started doing this a couple of months ago. We had a problem that we discovered was related to composite indexes. It made basically the database crash whenever you quit the database. That was the problem. And it took us a while to find what the real cause was. And researching that, you spend a lot of time in the interface that 4D has for you for composite indexes. And that is not a great interface, basically, because you just get a long list of composite indexes. And the only thing there's no filter possibility. You can only sort of them. So, and if you have 5,000 or how many indexes, if you have 1,800 indexes, that's a tough thing to crack, to find all the indexes that you need to look at and what index is related to the table and all that kind of stuff. So that was the reason, basically, I said there must be a better way of getting all the structural information in one view.
Right. It's a nice way to research these kind of structural issues, or just to find you might find some surprises given that the composite indexes aren't graphically represented as such in the structure editor.
That's correct. And I realize that not everybody works with composite indexes. I still remember when I started with 4D, now 32 years ago, I think. I was surprised that, and I don't think at that point 4D even had composite indexes. And I kind of missed them because I came from an environment that had them. And then you get used to working without them, and you say, oh, maybe you don't really need them. And then at a certain moment you say, can we split this up with a composite index? And you find out that you can, and then you start using them again. So that is the whole story on why this project basically started. And normally I wouldn't spend that much time on a utility like this, but as you said in your introduction, I'm retired now.
Okay.
And I can do a little bit more what I really want to do than just what I have to do, right? And that, maybe one more thing, there is a help function available here in case you miss how you go through all the different tabs and how you move from one relation back to a table and all that kind of stuff. There's even a link here to the 4D documentation in that help file. What is the relevant 4D documentation? And while you were talking earlier, I just put this in here too. So you can go directly to GitHub here and find the project and download it from here if you want to. Of course, you have to have it before you can do that. So this is basically, or this was what are we presenting? It is just another interface on all the information that you already know, but all in one place. And I think it's an easier way to, definitely, if you want to, if you consider that this thing has 242 indexes, tables, and in 128 relations, because we don't just draw all the relations that we all could draw, because otherwise it becomes just too much. Just walking around through the relations, that's, I think, what is the best feature of this thing. Definitely, if you start to work with order, and you need to know that relation name, the one name, or the multi-name that you want to use when you retrieve information from a related table, that I think should help everybody out. Now, for the second part of this demo, we come basically to how did we do this? And this is the first time I do things this way. And just because I wanted to do things a different way that I know that I've been doing it for the last 30 years, basically. And why? Because 4D has now way more tools available or functions available that allows you to do that thing. Another thing that kind of triggered this was when you switch from binary mode to project mode, you, in the beginning, and at least for me, you kind of get a shock because you've always been used to work with one file. And now all of a sudden this becomes 16,000 files or something like that. So in the beginning, that's a little bit overwhelming. And I thought maybe can we reduce the number of files that we have? So for this exercise, I basically tried to put, if it was possible, to put everything in one method. And it is actually possible. Now I'm going to pull up another method that is basically just a template that you can use to come to this structure. So most of the code has been stripped here, but I'm going to walk quickly through what are the different cases when you run the method. So the first thing that I check whether you call the method with a parameter yes or no, or if there is any form event being triggered. If that's not the case, basically that is the entry point of the method. And you can think of this like a menu method. If you are in the menu in the menu editor and you attach a method to the menu editor, basically that is a method that you usually call without any parameters. So all that type of code where you set up eventually your menu can go in here. Now in this case, this is where we basically parse a form layout, because also the form layout is in this method. You don't have to do it like that, but you could. And here, once we have the form layout, we basically open the form itself. Now I could rip out all the code for the form layout and the method would still work, because of course I have the form itself also in the project. So why did I do this? Because this is easy to distribute all the functionality. I just need to distribute one method and everybody can use it and you don't need anything else. While you're developing, it's easier to do your development of the form just with the form editor. And once you're done with the form editor, there is another method that I will just show you that you can run. You point to the form and that will produce the 4D code to generate that form. Now, typically what I do, I copy that 4D form. Sorry, it's not here. I need to be at the end of the method, because otherwise the method would, or is rather long, but I can perfectly remove this code and remove all this code. So now my method is only 1800 lines long, and if I run it, it will still work because it will now call the form file itself instead of execute the code that I generated to construct the form, basically. Is this clear for everybody? Because this is kind of an odd thing to work, but it's what I was trying to accomplish. Now, the other ways that you go, if you go back to that template, so once you have your entry of your form, of your method, so when you have an incoming parameter, and in this case, my only parameter that comes in is an object, but it could be multiple. That's not necessary. So if I have no parameter, but my form event object name is null, then I am in the part where you have your form method. Okay.
Right. So this is different from what you might typically see in most 4D forms where the objects have their object method directly associated with the object. This is kind of a recursive calling method where the method not
Yeah.
only generates the form itself, but also has the object methods for the generated objects on the generated form. The object methods are within this large case statement.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, in this slide, that's correct. That's correct. And I will show you basically how you can how you can see whether the code that you generated, the code that you use to generate the code to execute the form results in the same form as that you basically edited in the form editor. I'll show you that in a second. So basically, if I have no parameters and the form event object name is not filled, then I know that I'm in my form method now. So this is all the code. This is where you have your own load and on menu selected and all the things that you normally do in your form method. Now, if I do have an object name in the form event, then I come in the else part of this thing, and then I have all my object methods. Now, all these object methods, if you look into the form, they refer to this method. They're all doing the same thing. It's just a call to this method. Okay? And then, since we can call this method with a parameter, basically this is basically subroutines that you can integrate in this method for code that is repetitive, that you call multiple times and stuff like that. You just call the code within the method itself with a parameter, and it does what it needs to do. And since the parameter is an object, you can have as many parameters as you like, because that just become attributes in your object. Correct? Still clear for everybody? Because it's kind of an unusual approach to things, but so far I have not run into any issues that would make me think I cannot continue going this way. One of the reasons that I introduced that help file was not because I absolutely wanted to do a help file, because I know you guys could have figured it out, but what would I do in this approach if I have two forms that I need called within the same method? Can that still be done? And it can.
Right. So it's an interesting exercise in the fact that all of your 4D interface and application can be generated on the fly from one piece of text.
Yeah.
While it may not be how everyone chooses to work, it's
no, and I fully understand that not everybody, and I wouldn't even do it for every case. And this was just okay. This is a pretty standalone thing. This is a utility, but the utility has a form. If I want to make it easy for everybody to use it, and I can put everything in one method, then it's easier to distribute to start with. And maybe people would use it easier than if they just have to use it as a component or whatever. So basically, how do we generate that form content? So if I do this here, so basically the whole project comes with 5 methods. One is that template, how you could start this type of method. This is the exercise itself of the demo that I gave. Then you have this method. Basically, this method creates 4D code to create a form based on the JSON file that's in your project. So if I run this one, and I go to the project. Project sources, forms. So this is the real form. Actually, this is the real form that the form editor creates when you're in project mode. So I just point to the folder. And why do I do that? Because I need this name, because I can have multiple forms in my method. This is the help text, and I need that too. So when I just point to that and I open it, so okay, it has run. So what I do at this moment, the whole text that I generated as 4D code is currently in the pasteboard. Where's my BB edit? Okay, so if I paste it in here, this 4D code is the equivalent of generating that form object. Now that form object is quite big in itself. If I go to this one, so this is what you just saw. This is, I mean, every page pretty much has 3 or 4 grids on it, with all and then you have the search function and all that kind of stuff. So that information is all generated basically by this code. So when I take this code and I paste it in my method, then from now on, when I run the method, it will run the code and no longer the form object itself. And that's just because that's how I did the method. If the one is not available, then use the other. You'll see that when basically you're saying if my form layout object is empty, then I just open the form that is generated by the form editor, and otherwise I use the object that I generated with the code. That's all. Now, how can you see that the form that you generated is the same as the form that you wanted to show? That's another method that you can use for that. And this was more a test method for me to see if the code that I wrote to generate the code for the form was correct. So if I paste the same code in here and I run this method, then I can compare basically the 2 methods. So what you see here is two objects. Basically, one is the generated one, and this one is the one that's in your project. And you will see that the only differences that there are basically is in the method attribute of every form object, where for these version calls this in your project method, I always call my method. And that's what makes that I only need one method to distribute. And all these changes that you see, they're all the same as all. The differences is just the calling of that method. And then at the end, I need to say this, what that method doesn't do yet, it doesn't look into views at this point. So it doesn't parse views if you have any, because I have never, probably because I have never used views in my life. And then the only thing that I basically add to that is a form name. And that form name is used to make or to tell the method which form are you actually calling the method from.
So that's very tricky how you changed the object method. So it's not that it's all actually being routed through, say, the form method, which is another way you could, another direction you could take it. It's all sort of repathing the form object method name. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see everything that has basically those anchors here with it's always the same code. So all the object methods call the one method that I have. Now, of course, if you parse that form, in that form, it doesn't do that because 4D puts something else in there. 4D creates an extra method for that form object and puts that in the project file, right? So if you look, forms. If you look at the object methods here in the file, you see these are all different methods, but they all have the same content. They all say whatever it is that I put in there. So basically what I do when I parse this object form, I replace all the method attributes with the name of my method instead of this name.
Right. And then the large case is able to route the code where it needs to go.
Where it needs to go, yeah.
Interesting. Again,
Yeah.
not maybe more of an exercise than a recommendation, but it's an interesting.
For me, it was just, can it be done? That was more what I wanted to accomplish, and it can be done. So,
A natural next step might be there's a couple of things you could do is move all of the code to the form method, which can route the events correctly according to, have all of the events be handled by the form method itself instead of by the object methods, and then turn the whole thing into a class. So that
well, that is the next exercise that I'm going to do now, because if you look at this method,
it looks like a big class.
It looks like a big class, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder now how easy or how difficult it would be to convert this into a class. But I think it has all the components, all the elements of a class, because this would be all in your class instantiation part. And then all the different cases that you have here would be class functions.
Right. Exactly.
So
yeah. Ready for part two then.
Ready for V2. Yeah.
Yeah. Let us know when you've classified it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting, and it's nice to know that it, as much as an exercise it was, its origin was to solve a real world problem, being the composite index corruption that was found by using exactly this kind of analysis.
Yeah. Yeah, I use this. No, not necessarily this technique, but using your form, since you have dynamic forms, for small things. I'm working on another project that's probably I'm gonna present first quarter of next year. basically it is a list component where the list is a little bit more than it used, or that it is now in 4D. Every list item basically has an object attached to it, and then you can have whatever you want, of course, in that object. Now, part of that component also gives you all the supporting functions to use that type of lists that the component generates, like drop downs and all of that kind of stuff. So all those drop downs and all those extra windows that you open, I don't have any window on that in the editor. I only generate them in code, and then use the form object, basically, the form layout object, to show everything. So just another way of working and getting used to it. I know it's not probably to everybody's liking, but I'm okay with that. Oh, unless there's more questions, I am done for today.
Great. Yeah, does anyone have any specific questions for Bruno? Getting a lot of nice compliments on your code and approach in the chat there. Brilliant, and thank you, Bruno. Yeah. Adam says the next step is to store the form into a data field and allow the end user or developer to edit the form in a custom user interface. That would be interesting, since it's all just text. It can be stored in a text variable in the end.
That's correct.
Adam also corrected me that you can't have everything just run in the form method. So at some point, there's a couple of exceptions where you have to run things in the object method.
And that was one of the things that I also had in the beginning. I couldn't figure out why all the code for my buttons triggered twice. So now I don't put a clicked event on the button anymore, because the click event is generated by the form anyway. And
Right.
Since everything comes to this one method, and then with the object name that produced the clicked event, I know what I need to process. So
Yeah, so sometimes I have found in my own programming style that for certain, especially repetitive interfaces, instead of having an object or a project method that you're calling all the time, it's better just to route all of those, to catch all of those object method instances or calls within the form method, just using the form object event to shake it all out to, which one got clicked and what do you need to do about it.
that is the beauty of the whole form event that we have now, that we never had prior
Right.
to it existing. That it really holds all the information that you needed. And I still remember a couple of years ago when I was using list boxes, it was not always easy to find out whether the event was triggered by the list box itself or a list box column. Now that is completely not an issue anymore, because now you actually have the list box column name in your
Right.
form event.
Right.
So it makes everything so much more.
Added a knowledge base article from 2022 that has code for transforming a utility form, just like any general form in your data in your application, into one executable method. So it's quite similar. It'd be interesting to see the comparison between your approach and the knowledge base article there. And Lee, I think, plugged in your code into his project and happened to find a table that he deleted 6 months ago, sitting in the trash. Yeah, so it's already had some utility.
Where did you get the code from to paste in? Was there a link in the chat for the code? Yeah, the GitHub link is further up the chat.
Thank you.
Right. It's also on the 4DMethod post. Yeah, I was gonna note something. Well, so I saw at the top of the methods you do have a copyright statement. Is this copyrighted code, or is this
No,
code?
this, you can basically do whatever you want with it as long as you keep that part in your code. That's it.
Ah, okay. All right. Yeah, that's always I don't always. I'll have to talk to my lawyer about how to use that.
Yeah. And if it's a problem, let me know, because I can always remove that code, and that's not an issue. This is a give back to 4D, basically. That's the way I see it.
Right.
The
Yeah,
fact that that's there, that is just a macro.
Oh.
Whenever I start a new method, that gets it there. And that's
Yeah,
it.
part of the standard header.
So
Standard header.
I just want to be clear, because I'm working on a project with some other 4D developers, and some of them love this kind of analysis, you know, with a 300 table structure with thousands of indexes, you know, they love seeing all these relationships. And I'd like to demo this for them and surprise them by saying, let me show you something. Open up the database, copy this one method, UT_catalog_view, paste it into our database, and then just run that method. And if I do that, that window will pop up and all of it'll work.
No.
That was the idea, basically. Easy distribution. Yeah.
Is that what happened, Lee? You just pasted in that one method and ran it and it worked?
I built the component, or I built a component from that code and ran that method.
Wait a minute. So you
And
took
ended up
all
with
the methods. So you didn't just do UT catalog view. You actually took it, made a component, and put the component in a database and then ran it from there?
Yeah, but I'm not on the ad campaign for anybody.
Okay, but
That's
So-
just what
so
I did to
Tim-
get where I didn't try to.
the easiest way is to do copy the method, paste it in, and then run it.
When
Yeah,
I
it's
tried that, I
work
got
that
an
way.
error about the missing form. So I
What?
may not have done something
Missing
right.
form. I thought he was creating the form on the fly. Or do you need a starting form?
No. You shouldn't. Now, I must be honest, I posted everything online, but I didn't download again. and
I
actually
tried
tested
grabbing
one.
from the Git repository. I tried grabbing that method and just running it, and I got an error at the end.
Ooh,
But
okay.
again, just quick and dirty while I was watching the thing. I should have
All
been paying
right.
attention.
Well, we may have to play around with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I would love to show them that, because that would do two things. First, one of the developers is going to say, wait a minute, you can include forms inside methods? And
Tim,
then
I'd be happy to send you the component, and you would still have your demo.
No. But I'd like to be able to demo that, yes, you can stick a form inside of a method and it works.
Oh yeah, that's been demonstrated
It-
here and in the knowledge
Well,
base
this is a good
article.
example, and this is a complex form. I mean, this has got
Yeah.
tabs and list boxes all over the place. You
Right.
see, so this is not trivial. This is
No.
actually useful. Okay, good. I'm going to try it and see if I can get it to work, and I'll let you guys know.
Great. Yeah.
If oh,
What I will
I'll,
do,
I'll post something on
what I-
4D Genius or somewhere back if I find out this is how you make it work. Copy paste one
Cool.
method.
what I will do by tomorrow morning is I'll put an update on the GitHub with copy the copyright text completely removed, so everybody can use it without any worries of ever being sued for it.
Cool.
Okay,
Well,
and
nice.
indeed, you're right, Tim. You should only be running the method.
Okay.
That's the only thing you need. The other three methods that are there are just examples of how you can start a method like that, or how you can generate the code of a particular form. You can use it for that, and all that code is included in an if true, so it's easy to collapse it, and then it doesn't obscure the rest of your code.
Does it, do you have any forms? Do you have any project forms in the structure? Are there any forms defined?
Yeah, there is two forms defined.
But they're not,
Basically,
That's
But-
that's what he's using
I'm saying
to generate the
I-
text.
that's correct. So basically, when I'm developing this method, I created the form the traditional way in 4D with the form editor.
yeah,
Right? But when I'm done, what I do is I generate 4D code to recreate the form as code, and I paste that code in the method.
okay,
And the moment you have done that, you only need the method to distribute. Of course, when you change the form, you need to do that copy paste again.
yeah.
But that's easy enough.
Well, that's yeah, that's part of the big part of the presentation is just the behind the scenes of how that interface was created. And that's useful in and of itself. Yeah. So any other questions for Bruno? It sounds like he's got there might be a bug fix and a new version without the copyright being put up soon.
Yeah, I'll do that right after we close here. I mean, I just need to remove that from form methods and push it again. That's all.
Yeah. And let's see. Great. Well, that's that was very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Another great presentation here on in the user group. And like I mentioned earlier, you know, let's see what you have going on. All the rest of you guys, we already have a suggested topic for November, so we've got all of next year to work on as well. So there's plenty of time to round it off and to show it off. So thanks, Bruno. Thanks again for the very interesting and thought-provoking demonstration of how you can just have it all in one method. So yeah, so thanks again to you and everyone at 4D and Kirk for covering the happy hour, and for all of you for joining and checking out the presentation today. And thanks especially to all of the Patreon supporters of the 4D Method user group. This all takes a lot of time to set up, and there are certainly costs beyond that. So any little bit of additional help is always appreciated, as well as any feedback from each of these events. You know, it's you know, just trying to make it offer a little bit of value out there. And if you find some value in it, please consider supporting on Patreon. So, all right, until next time, we will we'll see you in the happy hour. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks.